into this interview with Chris Willems, the founder of Cancer Active. Chris, thank you so much for all of the incredible work that you've been doing over the years. I'm not sure exactly how many years it's been, but I remember
18.
How many?
18.
Okay.
I'm actually a founder. People always say I'm the founder. I'm a founder of Cancer Active. My daughter founded it with me.
Yeah, amazing. And just a huge testament to her of all the work that you've done. Should be very proud, no doubt, and inspired. So thank you. Your book was one of the first, Everything You Need to Know to Beat Cancer. I think that was the title, a very original copy.
Yes, the first one was orange and it had 50 questions in it.
Yeah.
And it was funny because what had happened was we knew that Catherine was given 5 to 6 months, and we knew because we knew someone at the top of St Thomas's, and he was saying, prepare for the worst. And when Catherine got to 2 years and had beaten their 18-month best ever result, they came along and asked me if I write down what I found out. Well, you never say that to an advertising man, because there's a book in every advertising man. So I wrote this book, which was 50 questions and 50 answers. And looking back on it, I think now it's very naive. But equally, I'm troubled by the latest one I'm about to rewrite, because the latest one is so thick you can throw it through a bank window and rob it, I think. And so I'm going to break it down and I want to go back to where we were. And it was a really simple read, and you could get 6 months information in 6 hours. That's where I want to go back to.
That would be brilliant. I think it's that bite sizing, isn't it? That fundamental kind of how you do that, which is what you do with the Cancer Active magazines and things. Just to backtrack for anyone that doesn't know about Cancer Active and your story. So Catherine, your daughter was diagnosed with a brain tumor.
Catherine, got out of the blue. I mean, just fainted, bang, and she had a brain tumor, grade 4 glioma, and it has gone everywhere by the looks of it. And they gave her 5 to 6 months, and she lived nearly 4 years. So, and there were several things. I think, in truth, if I knew then what I know now, I think it'd been much longer too.
Can you give us an example of what that might be? A couple of those.
Well, for example, she had a life where she had loads of antibiotics, and she was forever getting tonsillitis. And so when she got it, I knew about yeasts and so on. So we tried to kill them, and we used things like oregano and so on. And it was difficult because Catherine said to me, Dad, she was 22 to 26, whatever you want me to do, I'll do, but I'm not going to change my lifestyle. Well, that kind of limits you. But in fact, what happened was that when she was about to die, I had 2 or 3 months left, I went to the doctors and said, look, guys, it's time we made up and we became friends. Can I have a blood test? And they hadn't got any. And I found this really incredibly strange that they, apart from the usual white cell rubbish, can I give you more drugs? And they hadn't really given her any drugs either. She'd had 2 drugs, but 1 round of each. She couldn't take the drugs. And so I went off to Harley Street and did this very expensive blood test. And they found that she had yeasts in her whole body and a parasite. And they even went so far as to say that she had yeast probably in her cranium and the parasite probably in her brain.
Okay.
And I remember going to the doctor and saying, what do we do? And he said, well, we've got the drugs, but the drugs probably kill her. And, now I know how to get rid of it. In fact, one of the first things we ever do with anybody with a brain tumor, cure their parasite. I would say 90% of people with a brain tumor have got a parasite. There's research as well.
Huge.
I believe there's research from America about, what is it called? The tick that bites you and you get Lyme disease.
Okay.
Borrelia burgdorferi. But I've had a girl in Essex, she's 32, and she's never been outside Essex. She's got a brain tumor. And I said, humour me, please do a parasite kill. And there's something very strange about English women. I'm sorry. They all send me pictures of what happens. And so she sent me all these pictures of worms and things that look like Ghostbusters. It was like the grey things you get out of Ghostbusters. And But please, if you do a parasite cure, you don't have to send me pictures. But I mean, you know, and she had it really bad, and she had brain tumor.
Okay, so 80% of brain tumors are connected to a parasite. And what about other cancers? In terms of the immune system, on your website, there's a lot around infections and viruses contributing to cancers. What's the research around that?
Okay, let's there's 10 questions. Okay, there. First of all, let's be absolutely clear. There is a gut-lung axis and there is a gut-brain axis. So anything that happens in your gut will manifest itself in your brain. Okay, so it's totally linked. And I've just been doing a lot of work on the gut-lung axis. And whilst this is a phrase that's really come into use in the last 3 years, I found a meta-analysis of 130 studies that went back to 1990. And we know, for example, if you take a baby, and mum's breastfed it for 6 months and so on, if you give a baby an antibiotic in the first 3 years of its life, it's 8 times more likely to get asthma or an allergy by the time it's 8. And that's an example. When you think, well, hang on, that all affects the gut. Well, it doesn't. It affects the lung microbiome too. And they know, and these articles said it quite clearly, that before you get pulmonary disease, whatever, you've lost a lot of good bacteria in your lungs. And if you get lung cancer, of course, they give you the drugs, and that causes more loss of good bacteria in the lungs. And if they tip you over the edge, of course, you have to have antibiotics. And now they're completely damaging the lung microbiome. And that's why some people with lung cancer get into trouble very, very quickly. So anyway, that's the first bit. What was the longer question? Sorry.
The role of viruses and infections, whether we'd put parasites underneath that as well within that.
Okay. Because of official words like pathogens and parasites, I use the word infection. There are 4 possible infections. Okay, this is for all cancers. So the first thing to say about all cancers, everybody who gets a cancer, the volume of good guys has gone down and they've lost strains of good guys. As a result of which, 3 things happen. Number 1, the immune system goes down because the immune system is produced in response to this volume and diversity of good guys, right? Or some bad guys. I mean, it doesn't know. The immune system has no idea about these invaders that have come into your body, whether they're good or bad. So it's just produced in response to them. So if these guys go down, the immune system goes down. If these guys go down, you're likely to lose production of some useful chemicals because these guys make microRNA, which helps yours. And secondly, they make chemicals that you use. Some are called B vitamins, some are called vitamin K, glutathione, serotonin keeps you happy, melatonin, short chain esters that actually block cholesterol forming, or short chain esters that can attack colorectal cancer cells, for example. So these guys make good things, but if you put them down, maybe you've lost something that's making something important. And finally, the good guys keep the bad guys in check. Now, talk about the bad guys. The bad guys, what's the difference between good guys and bad guys? Not a lot. Good guys make chemicals, good guys make microRNA, exactly what the bad guys do. Except the bad guys make chemicals that are toxins, and they make microRNA that can trump yours and turn it bad, turn it rogue. Now, there's one little side debate to that. Okay, so you've had bugs in your gut and you've got problems and they trump yours and you've now got a cancer. And most oncologists don't even think like this anyway. But some who when confronted with that, they say, well, you've got the cancer now, so it's not going to make a blind bit of difference. And in fact, what I would say to that is try telling that to Jeff Boycott, because that's exactly what happened to him. So we took away the parasite and his tumor went down. First person we ever did. And so I don't know the figure, but I'm going to guess that in 70% of cases, you can correct. But in 30%, I can't. I might try everything. And it just doesn't it might kill off the bad guys, but the mRNA, the microRNA has done its damage. Okay, so that's the bad guys. Now let's talk about bad guys. You asked a question about infection or parasites. There are 4 sorts of infection. Number 1, parasites. So you can go to Egypt. I mean, how many people have gone for a trip to China or Egypt or Morocco or Mexico and have food poisoning? Okay, huge. So that's a parasite. And what happens is Maryland Medical School have told the world as part of the Human Microbiome Project that what happens is we tend to let the food poisoning run. And when it runs, we just get over it, don't we? And so you've got 90 trillion bugs in your gut. And so when you had food poisoning, you had 2 trillion of them for about 24 hours. They were really powerful. Now you've probably only got 30 or 50,000 left. But Maryland Medical School told the world they can come back out to haunt you 20 years or more later.
Wow.
Okay, so that's food poisoning. Now we also know that the food poisoning, salmonella, listeria, whatever, knocks out strains of good guys. So remember as it went down, you lost strains. This is one way you can lose strains. Okay, we know this. And we know from several studies that some of those strains, for example, look after E. coli and keep it in check. And E. coli then comes out to play and slowly grows in the body. And once it gets above 1 trillion, you can get UTIs. And E. coli is a player in colorectal cancer, kidney cancer, bladder cancer, even in breast cancer, prostate cancer. So E. coli is a big player. So bad bacteria is the second area. So parasites and bad bacteria. Third one's viruses. Now this is quite interesting because it depends on the cancer, but glandular fever, EBV, stays around. So some of the blood cancers are driven by EBV. Next, blood and lymph, I should say. Next, it can be herpes, cold sores, or shingles. They're linked to cancer, especially prostate and things like that. But thirdly, and this absolutely amazed me when I found this out, you know about HPV and cervical cancer and so on. Okay. Yeah. Well, HPV is in much higher levels in prostate cancer, ovarian cancer, and breast cancer. I don't know why no one talks about it, but I did my research and there it was. Yeah, the fourth thing is yeasts. Now, funny enough, I've just been talking to Julian Kenyon of the Dove before this because we're doing some stuff together on gut microbiomes. Yeah. And I said to him, I think almost everybody with cancer has got bad yeast in his body. He said, I'm sure you're right. And basically, slightly different. Every time you eat a mouthful of food, you bring yeast into your body. And yeast can kill you, okay? But it's all right, you've got a great defense. Your good guys eat 2.2 pounds of yeast a night.
Wow.
And get rid of them. Wow. Now, what happens is, of course, in lots of cancer patients, whatever, the good guys are impaired. So the yeast then take over your gut and you feel a bit bloated, often during chemo, but it's the yeast. But they also lay down little roots across the gut wall. And when they lay down little roots across the gut wall, in life, some people get tired in the middle of the afternoon for no apparent reason. That is leaky gut. No one, I mean, 70% of the Western world have got leaky gut, but no one really realizes it. And leaky gut is caused because very small molecules go across the gut wall from your food and get into the bloodstream and poison you. So you get tired for half an hour while the blood system's being cleaned up. The problem is you then go and eat some gluten. Now, I'm not talking about trendy gluten intolerance. I'm just talking about you eat gluten. And gluten turns on an enzyme in the gut wall called zonulin, makes the holes bigger. Now the yeast can get into your bloodstream. And they will do in your bloodstream what they did in your colon, which is, number one, they like to sit on cells. So imagine an egg. They sit on the top part of an egg. And they don't kill the cell, but they poison the cell because no messages can get in and out at that point. And secondly, they colonize. So they go all around the body, colonizing areas of the body. I think this is really important in cancer. So what happens is when they colonize, they are anaerobes and they reduce the oxygen in that area. So they are setting up the conditions for cancer. Now, I'm not Simon Cheney. Simon Cheney says yeast are cancer and cancer are yeast. Yes, they metabolize the same way, but they're not the same. Okay, I'm just saying that yeast have the ability to set up the conditions for cancer. So you've got 4 types of infection in the body. They're all actually called pathogens, or they're actually all called parasites, but you get very confused if I called them all parasites. They are infections. And that's what happens to the body. And frankly, I stood up at a conference in 2004 in the morning, and I said I thought 70% of people with cancer had an infection like that. And I got laughed at. And in the afternoon, Professor Angus Dalgleish, and we hadn't talked, stood up at the same conference and said exactly the same figure. 70% of people with cancer have got an infection.
Wow.
Didn't get laughed at though. That's only me. So there you go. That's the infection issue. That's what happens to people. They've got an infection, and infections do a number of things. Specifically, they poison you. Specifically, they have microRNA, which trumps yours, but they then do other things. Did you know you've got a virome? You've not just got a microbiome, you've got a virome.
Yeah, okay, wow, yeah.
So you've got 90 trillion bugs in your microbiome, but 150 trillion in your virome.
Amazing.
You've got viruses in you.
Well, we're more bacteria than human, aren't we?
Well, we've got 13 times the number of bugs as cells. We have 7 billion cells. But the really big issue is they have 3 times more DNA than you have. So they have the ability to make 3 times more microRNA than you have. So at any one time in your bloodstream, 38% of the small molecules come from them, not you, 38%. So this is why they're controlling you. And this is why you've got to get it out of you, get them out of you. Now, in America, they know about this because the Human Microbiome Project was a 3-year project till about 2011-12 and involved 200 scientists and $178 million. And so in the Mayo Clinic, there were probably 4 guys down the corridor doing the research. So the oncologists knew them. Yeah. So they know about it. Whereas in Britain, we still have people, nurses, occasional oncologists, who just goes, oh, it's all a load of mumbo jumbo. You don't want to worry about that.
Yeah, well, we're backward. We're really backward, as we know. And
we're falling behind.
In terms of
40% of my patients are in America now. And I'll tell you, and we're falling behind.
Big time. So what can we do? Because actually that interconnects. So I had a blood cancer and I had supposed glandular fever, which I didn't know about, but that came up, and also UTIs and other things. So lots of things that might have been the trajectory for that, which I imagine a lot of us have had. What can we do about viruses, finding out whether we have them? What's a good test? And also if you have things, I'll go with that question for you.
Okay. Right, you can test for them, but it's very, very complicated. So, for example, on parasites, I had a parasite once. Went to Morocco. I got really hammered, food poisoning for about 6 weeks. I got rid of it and so on. It came back out to play when I was 42 and putting my companies on the stock market. The sheer stress, the good guys down, and out came the bad guys. That's what happened. And when I went to Harley Street about this stabbing pain in my stomach, okay, I got a stabbing pain about every 6 weeks. It lasted for 3 days. And I went to Harley Street's finest, and they even sent me back to the top guy. And it ended up with, he literally said, I cannot find anything wrong with you. He thought I was some sort of philanderer. And so he said, what do you do? I mean, that's the most stupid issue out. I mean, what do you do? That's going to affect my stabbing pains? And I said, I'm a chairman of an ad agency. I've got companies in direct marketing. It's advertising. He said, advertising. That's why you get a stabbing pain in the gut. And I said, no, in advertising, we get stabbing pain in the back. And, it was just a nonsense. They don't understand parasites or any of this stuff because they haven't been educated in it. We worry about their lack of knowledge in nutrition, but they don't really know about this. And when they go to test for parasites, for example, they get 6 guesses. They send off a stool test, they get 6 guesses. And if it comes back negative, it doesn't mean you say you haven't got a parasite, it just means they guess wrong. How do they know what's in Egypt or China? They can't. So you then go on, really. And again, I was talking to Julian, and we were saying, I mean, my form that I send out to people is quite comprehensive. Have you ever had pneumonia? Have you ever had food poisoning? Have you ever had, whatever? I go through a whole list of things. And, bad bacteria, yes, you could do tests. There are lots of different tests. I'm not too sure how good they are, and companies come and go. And I'm working with Julian now because I want him to have he has got a test, and I want us at Cancer Active to be able to offer it to people.
Would it be fair, Chris, to assume, not to assume because we know that's not a good thing, but would it be fair to, if you have had international travel, so I was out and I was diagnosed, or if you've been in India or Africa, to consider that there might be quite a high chance that you might have a parasite? Because I have a lot of friends.
I mean, I get people in America who've gone to Mexico and whatever, and they, the next question is, did you ever have food poisoning there? And they go, no. And you think, well, you're really lucky, aren't you? I mean, I get people, China, Thailand, whatever, and they just say, no, I never had food poisoning. And I find that absolutely amazing. I mean, I've had 2 cases of bile duct cancer, and this is in Britain, and in the last 4 months, in both cases, I said, have you been tested for liver fluke? And they sort of look at you, no, why? Well, look it up. Liver fluke, liver cancer, bile duct cancer is a very strong link. Now, I believe it or not, I do people in India. And I was talking to a lady with bile duct cancer, and I had 2 children, in fact. And I said, after about 10 minutes, I said, she got a parasite. She's obviously got a parasite. And they went, well, everybody has. Pardon? Everybody's got a parasite? Oh, yeah, everybody in the town. We all eat the fish from the river, and they've all got parasites.
Yeah.
So, maybe you didn't get food poisoning, but, if you've been to China for a while, or Egypt, or India, or whatever, you've probably got something, okay? Now, your question was about viruses. I think the same thing applies. Very hard to find a microscopic bit of parasite, of a virus in you. And look at it the other way. If you go and have a test, it can cost you quite a lot of money. Well, you can use things like oregano oil or Pau d'Arco for viruses. Oregano oil for your yeast, Pau d'Arco for your viruses. You can use artemisinin. Artemisinin will kill 1/3 of all parasites. It will kill things like E. coli, Fusobacterium, and so on. It will kill yeast, and it even kills a couple of cancer cells. And then I have a parasite killer. I'm not trying to flog anybody with a parasite killer, but it works, and it's got a virus killer and it's got a yeast killer in it. That's why I built it like that. So yes, you can get on and do it. I mean, 12 to 20 weeks, you've killed the lot.
Fantastic. I know there are a couple of our members who have been doing that, so we'll kind of continue that discussion around that. But it's just essential, isn't it? Because that is going to completely affect your gut and your immune system. And as you say, if you do have a stressful situation, maybe it's lingering, and then stress kind of reduces that and it comes up.
Right, you got it. All right. Okay, we'll talk about stress. Let's talk about how you put your good guys down. Okay? Because you live in a country, I don't live there anymore, but you live in a country where cancer research is adamant stress has got nothing to do with cancer. Okay, they're mad. I can prove it 4 or 5 ways. And what puts your good guys down? Well, obviously, everybody goes, drugs, antibiotics. Yep, that'll put your good guys down. Proton pump inhibitors, the worst, and omeprazole. How many people do I get who've been put on omeprazole for their drugs? So it's like a double whammy. Then what will surprise you is the second one is you don't feed your gut bacteria correctly. Your good guys love soluble fiber. They love oats, and there's something called psyllium. Oat psyllium. They love nuts and seeds. They love vegetables. They love pulses. Right? That's your good guys thrive on that. And people who eat the highest levels of soluble fiber have the best immune systems. That's what I was telling you earlier on. Alternatively, you could feed their enemies. Their enemies love sugar. Yeast loves sugar. E. coli loves sugar. You can feed their enemies. High fructose corn syrup, lactose, and so on. Thirdly, you can get a parasite. That puts your good guys down, I told you. But fourthly, yep, you can change the acidity of your gut. I'm going to say something very clearly to everybody. Your gut needs to be acid, right? You know this whole thing about you need an alkaline body? That's kind of the O level, okay? That's not really true, right? Not for the A level. The A level people will go on from there. What you need is an acid gut, and you need alkaline mitochondria, right? Mitochondria are the power stations. How do you get alkaline mitochondria? You eat lots of magnesium and potassium foods and low sodium foods. But you need an acid gut. Well, none of those will affect the gut. Well, not too much. Sodium chloride can affect the gut. But magnesium, potassium foods, great. They'll make you more alkaline in the body, but won't affect the acidity of the gut. You need an acid gut. pH, water, 7. Cancer tumor, 6.2. Okay, really acid. Baby just comes through the birth canal being breastfed by mum, 5.5. Unbelievable, really acid gut. So you need an acid gut, and when you have an acid gut, it keeps bad guys in check. Okay, so that's one of the important things you need to do to correct your microbiome. But you can change the acidity of your gut yourself. No problem at all, dead easy. You smoke, you binge drink, or you get stressed, right? That'll do it. And a week or two of stress, about the same as having antibiotics for 5 days.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. We know.
And then we have a situation, though, that cancer, as we know, is highly stressful. So then it's that fundamental thing of how we can navigate whatever stage you're at.
Okay, cancer's got about 5 to 10 ways of spreading. I always call it shutting the doors. When I build someone a personal prescription, I talk about shutting the doors. Okay, now stress does one thing, affects your gut microbiome. Stress also actually sends a message to your adrenals, and your adrenals produce cortisol and adrenaline. And these both turn on an enzyme which is in every cell of your body called COX-2. And if you turn on COX-2, it makes about 130 eicosanoids, which are highly inflammatory hormones, which literally can cause inflammation everywhere in your body. Now, this is the point you're making. What happens is cancer wants that to happen. So cancer goes and kicks your adrenals, and your adrenaline and your cortisol go up, and that helps turn COX-2 on and drive cancer around the body. So it's got a system for actually sending itself around the body. And it starts off with you getting stressed, and then it can actually propagate itself. It can get worse and worse and worse. But that's the body rather than the gut. Although COX-2 is very important in colorectal cancer. It's for example, it actually causes polyps to grow and things like this. So COX-2 is a very important player in colorectal cancer.
Okay, amazing. So there's obviously a lot to take in, and what I'd really recommend for everyone is obviously we're going to keep exploring some of these topics, but Cancer Active, the website, and researching that, there's fantastic research on there. So we'll share that link. So Chris, we kind of jumped into it, but the immune system, just to kind of explore that, obviously we've talked about viruses and pathogens and gut health. I'd love to just touch on with you, because we haven't spoken about this, the role of oral health and our oral microbiome and the effects on immunity.
Okay, I will do it, I promise.
Perfect.
Oral microbiome, I think, has shocked a lot of people, because there's now incredible amount of research over the last 3 or 4 years showing that people with gum disease are more likely to get pancreatic cancer, liver cancer, and so on. And to put it simply, if you've got bad gum disease or whatever, you've got bugs that are bad, you swallow them, they get into the bloodstream or whatever, and then they get down here into the gut. And we know that prior, for example, to pancreatic cancer, there's a 1,000-fold rush of bacteria from the gut to the pancreas. 1,000 times it goes up. And we know for example, and I can't remember its name, it's called something like Mazzari, but there's a yeast that literally goes with it. And they've decided that maybe this yeast, I can't remember its name, sorry, begins with an M. Maybe this yeast causes pancreatic cancer that's kind of come through the body from the gut. They then dropped that into healthy cells, healthy pancreatic cells, nothing happened. And then some bright spark found there was a carbohydrate on the surface, I think it was called MBL. And they took that and dropped it into the pancreatic cells, cancer, oncogenesis. So that's just one little example. So we know that what goes on here goes on there, and what goes on there controls everything. Okay, it's that simple. Let me tell you something about the immune system, if I may. When you're born, you have a basic immune system. It's called the innate immune system. And it's like the first line of defense. It's not wonderful, but it can deal with a few things. And basically, if it can't deal with them, for example, dendritic cells in the innate system kind of get hold of a bit and then pass it over to the other system. It's called the adaptive system. And the adaptive system has T cells that kind of look at all this and pass it on to B cells. And the B cells actually make antibodies that attack. And if you look at the top 6 studies on Google, that's what they talk about: innate system, adaptive system. That's all. It's wrong. It's wrong. Okay. So let's talk about COVID. What happened in COVID? What happened was 98+% of people who died in the first couple of months all had metabolic syndrome. I never can remember. Metabolic syndrome, you have to have 3 out of 5 criteria. I think it's high blood pressure, high blood sugar, low good cholesterol. I can't remember. So never mind, you can guess. And so people have got this bad body. Okay, being overweight's another one. And what happens, of course, is their adaptive system is down because of it. And so that's what people were talking about. Nowhere does it say how you get a stronger adaptive system.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you get a stronger adaptive system? By fixing this. It's a law of physics, which is action and reaction are equal and opposite. And that's what it's about, really. So when you were a child, you were like 1. You got a cold. And about 2 weeks later, you got another cold. And then 6 weeks later, you got another cold. And then you got another cold. Don't kids get a lot of colds?
Yeah.
No, you didn't. What happened was, one of those times, you touched the neighbor's dog. And then you put your fingers in your mouth. And you got a new bug in your gut. And the white cells come out to attack. They have no idea, as I said, well, it's a good bug or a bad bug. They come out to attack. And as long as you've got that bug in your gut, they're there. They take about 12 hours to form the jigsaw piece that fits them. Okay? Now they're ready for anything else that looks like that. So the whole reaction to that bug boosts the T cells, the B cells, and the antibody production system. And what happened in COVID was COVID entered the body, and these people, because they were ill, they had metabolic syndrome, let's call it metabolic, but they're ill, for goodness sake, diabetes and so on, they actually couldn't cope. So their T's and B's are low. And what happens is the body has a backup system, and it produces cytokines. And cytokines is a bit like a petrol booster or something like that. And it just puts these cells up so they're stronger and they can attack. But they couldn't, because they were so weak, because these people were on drugs for their illnesses and so on, and their microbiome was shot. So the body produced more cytokines, given another boost. Still didn't work. 3rd or 4th round of cytokines kills you. You get a cytokine storm, because the cytokine storms just can't do their job. So suddenly the body's flooded with cytokines, bingo, you're dead.
Okay.
So
yeah,
if people had not been ill in the first place, they would have had much stronger microbiomes, and they would have had stronger immune systems, T cells, B cells, whatever. And this is the whole area, as I said, microbiome, virome. This is the whole area that's missing from Google on the top 6 studies. It doesn't explain the immune system. I've just explained. That's the immune system.
Yeah. And so in terms of kind of some core areas, which we have obviously gone into, thanks, Chris. When you're going through active treatment, what can you do to support your immune system if it's kind of ongoing and you're at a late stage?
When you're going through cancer treatment?
Yeah.
We always kill the bad guys. That's the first thing. It was very funny. I'll tell you a little story. I have an ad agency in Dubai. And normally it's 1 minute to get into Dubai. And this particular day, there's 4 plane loads of people trying to get through immigration. There's 500 of us and we aren't going anywhere. And I was really rude. I turned around to the man behind me, little guy. And I said, so what do you do then? And he said, I'm a Harvard professor of rheumatism and arthritis. And so, not to be deterred, I said, so what drugs do you use for that? And he said, we found, this is 2011, he said, we found the drugs don't work. We don't use drugs anymore. We only do it with diet. Unbelievable. How many people in Britain are on drugs for arthritis and rheumatism?
Yeah, huge.
So we got chatting, and it was all, as we moved down, it was all about the microbiome. It was all about COX-2. They're the 2 things. He said to me, it's very simple. That's what drives arthritis and cancer. And you eat these foods, you make more of these guys, and these guys produce anti-inflammatory molecules. You eat these foods, you produce more of these guys, and they make inflammatory molecules. Okay? So if someone's got cancer, one of the first things I do is kill these guys, because these are the bad guys. They're making inflammatory molecules. I'm not saying it's going to cure your cancer, but I tell you what, you're a lot better off without them than you are with them. So that's why I kill the bad guys. And we'll use oregano to kill your yeast. And then I'll ask loads of questions. And we might use Paldaco, we might use artemisinin, but you can't use artemisinin with radiotherapy. And we might use a parasite killer. Depends where that person is, how old they are, what I think they've got, and so on. So we will kill the bad guys. Because inflammation is about bad guys, it's about COX-2. So that's what we will do. And it just depends on the cancer. So yes, you're right. Blood and lymph, for me, tend to be more about yeast and viruses. Whereas lumps and bumps tend to be more about yeast and parasites and E. coli and things like that. So I'm less into viruses with it. It just depends. I look at the background of the person. It's
totally individual. But if you've had something like food poisoning, it'd be very good to, abroad, it'd be very good to look into that parasite element.
Yeah, I would say that the problem with parasites is, I was joking earlier on, but telling a story about a girl who had these worms and goodness knows what else.
They're like the kind of sea monkeys that you grow in a jar when you're younger, if you ever saw them.
Well, the problem is a lot, for example, in Carolina, they have parasites that are so small you can't see them. They're microscopic. I had a lady, this is a true story. I had this lady, and I think, I even remember she was in Wales. And about 2 weeks after the PP, she was ringing Wendy like crazy in our office. This true story, right? And so Wendy said, you've got to talk to her. I don't know what it's about. You've got to talk to her. So I rang her up on Zoom, or those days it was Skype, and said, what's the problem? And she said, your bloody periphery gave me a cough. Okay, whatever. She said, I coughed and I coughed for 10 days. And then I coughed this up. And I'm not joking. I'm sorry, audience. It was this big. And it was like a giant white maggot. And it had all you had to do was like Pentel, a smiley face and 2 little eyes on it.
Amazing.
And she did it across the room, apparently. And I have to say, all I could think of saying at the time was better out than in.
Totally. Yeah.
What was I supposed to do? But, it just highlights the fact that you can have anything. I mean, if you've traveled the world, yes, you're right, you can have anything.
What do you think about coffee enemas then for parasites?
You asked me what I think about coffee enemas or parasites in coffee enemas.
Coffee enemas?
Coffee enemas, I wouldn't bother. I, all right. I feel very strongly about this. I feel, and I say this pretty well to all my PP patients, when I've done you a PP, I give people options. Take out of it your plan, the ones you can do. There's no point in me telling an 86-year-old woman to go running.
No.
You know, she can do juices and she can do flaxseed, so that will get her oxygen up, or she can go for hyperbaric oxygen. So I give people choices. Go down the list, pick out your choices, send it back to me if you want, but just put it on the fridge door. That's your plan. And 5% of your life should be cancer, and 95% should be getting on and enjoying life.
Totally. And that is so fundamental. Yeah.
And I get people, and I'm sorry, I get people, and it tends to be women more than men. Okay. Men just want the pill. They just want a pill. And when I give them 6 pills, they thank me for it. And they just get on with those 6 pills. They just mechanically do it.
Yeah.
But I get some women who just want to debate everything. And I know that these people are spending 102% of their lives worrying about whether they should have been taking beta-glucans or was I don't know, pine bark extract enough.
Yeah, totally.
And they're going to go to an early death because they've let cancer dominate this. I mean, there's a kind of joke in golf about, you know, what's the hardest distance to hit a ball this far. You know, this is what it's all about.
Yeah.
And it is in cancer too. I mean,
because it becomes a bit of an identity, and then it's kind of like, how do we move beyond? We know that focusing on life and health is what's going to keep you going. So, but I think there can be that fear of looking at all the research. What if I miss out on the research? What if I don't do this? It's the what if, and then it can be all consuming.
I think it's more fundamental. There is a Henry Ford quote, which is, there are those that think they can, and there are those that think they can't, and they're both usually right.
Yeah.
And that's what you've got to do. You've actually got to change your mindset,
your beliefs. Yeah.
You've got to, you know, I think I do a lot of that with people. I think I help them with their psychology, because I mean, we had one guy, this again, true story. Wendy got the email, and he wrote to me and he said, he said, I was one of your first ever PPs. Well, that would have made it sort of 17 years ago.
Wow.
And I always say to people, what do you want from me? Because I can do all sorts of things. I get some people say, what's the best clinic in Mexico or Germany? What do you want from me? He said, you asked me what I wanted from you. And I said, look, I've had a biopsy, I've had surgery, I've had radiotherapy, I've had 6 years of drugs. And last Tuesday, they sent me home to write my will because I've got terminal prostate cancer. And that was the first paragraph. The second paragraph was very short. He said, you blew up at me. Well, I would do. What's terminal cancer? What do you think terminal cancer is? Right, it's nothing to do with you dying. They have run out of ideas.
Exactly.
They have run out of ideas, so they get you off the books and they send you home. Go write a will. Because they've got no more drugs or anything like that. And it's a numbers game. The third paragraph was basically, I did the plan, I pinned it on my fridge door, which is what you said, and I haven't had prostate cancer for 6 years. He said, but the biggest thing you did for me is, he said, you took me out of the tunnel.
Yeah. And
he said, the NHS were brilliant, can't fault them, but then the second I got it, I was in this tunnel. You know, you've got to come Thursday afternoon to see this man about this. You've got to come back Friday morning because we need to talk to you about the chemo. And so it went on. He said, and they dominated my life. And all I knew was that sooner or later I was going to run into the wall at the end of the tunnel. He said, but after 2 hours with you, I realized that I didn't have to be in the tunnel in the first place. Totally. He said, so I pinned the plan up there and I got on with my life. And he said, the cancer just went away.
And again, it's a huge one. You don't hear the good news. You don't generally hear of the amazing. I know quite a few people who have had that terminal and they're here 10, 15 years on, but we're not going to hear about it. And also charities, for example, the one that you mentioned earlier for fundraising, you're going to hear about the other side. We are coming a little bit to question time. So thank you, Chris. There's so much to cover. I think, again, we might have to invite you back if that's okay at some point, because there's a lot on this topic. On the immune system. On the immune system. What about people who are in recovery and wanting to prevent reoccurrence and that side of things as well? Or just
it's slightly different. You see, you've got to get the basics right in your gut. And I often get to the end of, not often, sometimes I get to the end of the whole PP and they go, you haven't given me anything for my immune system. I've given you a diet and I've killed all the bad guys off. And that's going to do exactly what I've just told you. But it's true, I don't necessarily think all SCAC or beta glucans or vitamin E or vitamin C. I mean, a lot of people say, why don't you use vitamin C with me? Vitamin C is an interesting one because I interviewed Thomas Lodi, who has a clinic in Arizona, and I know Neil Riordan. And about 1/3 of people have got low vitamin C.
Yeah.
So you would think, wouldn't you, just give them vitamin C and you'll correct it. Doesn't work. Just doesn't work. And Neil Riordan, the intravenous vitamin C king of America, doesn't know why. Now, I've got a theory, which people, and your listeners need to understand this. Vitamin C is a big molecule, like lycopene, like turmeric, like vitamin E, and vitamin C has liposomal vitamin C. How many people, when they pop their vitamin C powder or the vitamin C pills, think to take oil with it?
I do, but I think, a lot of people wouldn't think about the fat needed.
Yeah, so you've got to have oil with your vitamin C, form liposomes, and then not 7%, but 90% will get into your bloodstream.
Yeah.
So your question was about recurrence. How do we deal with the recurrence? Well, we would tend to start using more supplements then, for example, or more actions against it. There's a lady called Dr. Young S. Kim, and she runs all nutrition and cancer at the National Cancer Institute. And she's actually pulled together like 4 studies that she commissioned on recurrence. And she said that you need foods that contain sulforaphanes, curcumin, piperine, black pepper, vitamin E, vitamin A, EGCG, genistein, certain B vitamins. I think that was it, maybe a bit more. It was 9, so I forgot one. Sorry, guys. She went on to say that if you can't get those in your foods, you could always use quality supplements. How many doctors know this in Britain? This is the biggest government body in the world, the National Cancer Institute, biggest cancer government body in the world.
I was speaking to Professor Robert Thomas. We're going to have him in here in the community as well, and he does a lot of talk on when people come into his office in the hospital, and he'll say, so what pills are you on? And he'll start to take them off them. And I know you've done some work with Rob Thomas.
Yes. Ask him about the glass of red wine he had with me in the Groucho Club. No, it's a joke.
Okay, great.
That's how we met once in the Groucho Club years and years ago and talked about, in fact, what led to Pommy Tea.
Yeah.
So I know Robert. Yeah, he's on our medical board.
Okay, amazing. So, Chris, are you up for this? I know I've been firing questions. I've been firing questions at you, but we have a few minutes for questions. So I'm going to do a bit of a quick fire round, the ones that have come in. Also, there's a question from Nikki. She said, is this all relevant if you've got the BRCA? Let me go up. Is this all relevant for those with genetic trigger BRCA gene, for example?
Okay. If you've got BRCA1, BRCA2, PALB, etc., you are more likely to get cancer. Fact. Once you've got cancer, your statistics of survival are no different from anybody else's. So yes, you need to get on and do everything I've been saying today. Rebuild your gut, kill all the bad guys, take your supplements, eat properly, whatever. That's what you need to do.
Okay, great. When you say take supplements with oil, we're talking about a teaspoon, aren't we? It's a small amount just to get the fat.
Yeah, I believe it's a package. You have to kill the bad guys. You have to eat properly. You have to take some supplements. I mean, what is the most important supplement for boosting your immune system?
Vitamin D?
Well done, 10 out of 10. Okay, vitamin D affects the T cells, affects the B cells, and is essential to the antibodies. Otherwise, your immune system cannot attack. You can take all the vitamin C and everything else you want, but it won't go and attack. And it's very interesting because I just wrote this piece about, I've always said 50 ng per mil is what your blood level needs to be for vitamin D. But I just wrote this piece saying shout 1 to 5 because
wow.
I get people in British hospitals, we measure it in nanomoles per litre just to confuse the hell out of everybody. And I get nurses going up to my patients going, oh, look, you're 65, 68, that's really high. You know, it's not, divide by 2.5. And you'll realise that, you know, even, I think they've withdrawn it, but even the National Health System, right, 80% of people, whatever the cancer, are below 20 ng per mil. And that's severe deficiency. Deficiency is below 30. COVID, if you were over 30, you got a cough and a splutter and it had gone. You know, and in America, they tell you to be over 40. The Endocrine Society says 40 to 60. And I've always been smack in the middle at 50.
I remember you saying at one of your talks, 95% of women diagnosed with breast cancer have low vitamin D. And Dr. Arian, in a previous talk that we had 2 weeks ago, I think it was 2 weeks ago, she said there's a 13% increase in the survival of raising vitamin D for a particular study, for a particular cancer type. So yeah, it's a big one.
Vitamin D is essential.
Okay,
sorry.
So
keep,
some of these questions for you, Chris. Lynn asked, and I can't actually find the question, but it was about how to heal the gut wall because she thinks that you weren't too pro bone broth.
Well, there's a slight issue. Again, I've just been talking to Julian Kenyon about a lot of things, and we both agree on this. How do you cure the gut wall? Answer, you cure the microbiome.
Yeah.
Okay, and the gut wall will follow. And sometimes the issue isn't actually healing the gut wall per se, it's stopping the inflammation that you've got there. You know, so you've got to think also about what anti-inflammatories you can use for the gut, vitamin D, fish oils and things like that. So I'm not pro bone broth, especially beef bone broth, if you have cancer, because beef bone broth is full of glutamine and glutamate, right? And as most people will tell you that know, it's alternative glutamate, it's an alternative fuel for glucose. In fact, glutamate is how you store glucose. It comes from folic acid, it comes from glutamine. So you're actually providing the cancer with more fuel. So I wouldn't, if I had cancer, especially colorectal cancer, I wouldn't touch a beef bone broth. Now, how do we heal the gut wall? Answer, control inflammation, eat the right diet, kill the bad guys, and you're on the way.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Another question. What is the best thing to do or eat to help the immune system detect cancer cells and get rid of them so they don't go on to create new tumours?
What's the best thing to do or eat
to help the immune system detect cancer stem cells and get rid of them?
I wouldn't know how it would detect cancer stem cells. I'm not too sure anybody knows how to detect cancer stem cells. I do know what you can use to kill cancer stem cells. And I, again, talking to Julian, we totally agree on this. We had 2 chats because he's coming on my show. Yeah. And it's frightening because we just agree on everything. And
that's excellent though. That's nice to have a companion, someone.
Yeah, and he's a doctor. And I don't know whether you know, but Julian's working on a test, and he just
poo transplant.
Pardon?
Is it a poo transplant?
He did. No, he's going to do a test, and from there he can do the rest. But it's very interesting because, and he's gone a bit where I am. A full fecal transplant. Okay, and when I was in Australia in 2014, I met Thomas Brody, who's been doing about 20 years. A full fecal transplant, microbiome transplant, you have to rely on the donor. So they give the donor a load of key questions. You know, have you ever had this? You ever had that? Whatever. And it tended to be a very practical questionnaire. And people were having fecal transplants. I have no idea what the number was, 1 in 20, whatever, got depression or something like this, because they hadn't questioned that in the donor questionnaire. And I told you about baby's gut. With what we do, we use things like a glass of water with lemon juice and apple cider vinegar in it in the morning, bang, to acidify your gut. And this is why I'm totally against sodium bicarbonate. Now, Julian has moved to this lactic acid, I don't know what you would call it, transplant. So he's got loads of different strains of lactobacillus, loads of different strains of bifidobacterium, plus a couple of other lactic acid bacteria. And that's what he's giving people. And he's written 2 papers on it, and he's got 2 out of the top 3 microbiome papers, because he's kind of quite an academic. Yeah. And he's also giving people sodium butyrate, because sodium butyrate is made by some gut bacteria to kill colorectal cancer cells. So what he's doing, he's really actually trumping it. And what we were talking about was actually, in truth, when you get colorectal cancer, I see people who get rushed into for the scalpel job, then they get given Folfox or Folfiri, which are 4 big heavy duty drugs, and they're never going to walk out of this. No. You know, it's extreme. He said something I found very interesting. He said, if people come to us early enough, we're giving them a transplant early, before anything else. Well, think about the logic of it. That's what you would do, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
This is all come about because of your gut. Have I gone off the question? I can't remember what the question was.
I'm just wary of time, and there's probably going to be a few, but it's great. I think it's fantastic information. What's the best thing you can do to keep your immune system strong if you are on chemo tablets, 2 weeks on, one week off? Any ideas?
Very, very hard on chemo.
Yeah.
By the way, you asked me a question about cancer stem cells. There are natural compounds that attack cancer stem cells. I would never use doxycycline and things like that. I'm really against it. And he agrees with me. It's a strong antibody, whatever people say.
It's really important, because that off-label, it's kind of really looking into the off-label movement and actually how to support yourself alongside that.
I'll be back to talk about off-label drugs, because I feel very strong about this. People are playing with fire.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Really important.
People are playing with fire. Now, not always, but some are burning embers and some are flames. On my site, just look it up. Just go to Cancer Active, cancer stem cells, and you'll see arsolic acid, lycopene, EGCG, curcumin, whatever. It's a whole list of things that can correct cancer stem cells. Take the lot. Ashwagandha. What was this last question?
So next question from Kevin.
Chemotherapy, immune system, you can't. You're going to lose your immune system. You're going to lose your white cells. What you've got to do with chemotherapy is keep taking the oregano right through chemo, right until 6 weeks afterwards, because you will get, when the good guys go down, you will get a very bad yeast infection, which is why you get tired. And
oregano is amazing, isn't it? I took it throughout COVID, and it was really good. Question from Kevin: What do you like to keep glucose levels to? And he says, I can still cycle and swim. Does this affect my glucose levels?
Very interesting. I was talking to Professor Thomas Seyfried, ketogenic diet king.
Yeah.
And of course, he only wants you to have 2% of your calories from carbohydrate. And I said, no, I want my people with breast cancer to go and eat pulses and things like this. I want my people with cancer to eat soluble fibers and things like that, right? I want them. What do you do about breast cancer, Thomas? Hormonally driven cancers. What do you do about boosting people's immune system? And he was looking at me like, you know, well, you're giving them lots of carbs. I said, no, it's all right, because I underpin it with berberine, 3 lots of 500 milligrams a day. That's what I use. I have done for 18 years. I use berberine underneath it all to cut fasting blood sugar below 4.5. In fact, berberine usually gets it down to about 3.7. And when I said 4.5, he said to me, oh, fine, that's all right. And I said, why? He said, we've done a lot of research on this. Your fasting blood sugar should be below 4.5. Because at that level, this is what the man said from Boston College. He said, your cancer can't feed.
Yeah.
I haven't received the research yet.
Fantastic. So from Reese, with regards to gut health, what does Chris recommend testing? How does Chris recommend testing for your microbiome? And if so, how frequently?
Never thought about that.
There's viral, isn't there?
We are. I'm going to work with Julian on something. We're going to have a test, and you will be tested, and Julian will take you through it. That's what I'm planning to do. And as I said, he's a bit of an academic, so he won't leave anything out. I would kill the bad guys first. I would do the oregano and the para-free or whatever based on your form. I would kill the bad guys first, and then I would go and do the, if you like, this high lactic acid. Well, I don't know what he's going to call it, transplant.
Okay. And any go-to probiotics? I know you've got a probiotic, and also I think it's important to vary it, isn't it, over time, to vary the probiotic.
I think it, you know, I mean, people talk about Simprove, but Simprove has got glucose. I think 3 or 4 lactic acid bacteria, no bifidobacteria in, and it's got Enterococcus faecium, which actually is a good guy that can turn bad on you. It's actually down in Wiki Microbe as being a pathogen. So, you know, you've got to be ever so careful. The rule is basically you don't want to have glutamate in there. You don't want to have sugar in there. You actually want to have strains of lactobacillus, and you want to have strains of bifidobacteria, because we've got research that shows quite clearly that lactobacillus strains and bifidobacteria strains are synergistic. We've got that. And people who've been my PPs will know, I say, if you're just building doing a rebuild, I use it for 12 weeks with the oregano oil. And at the end of 12 weeks, even if you've got breast cancer, I'm going to use a tablespoon of unpasteurized cheese one day, and I'll use some chuckling goat kefir the next day, because I'm giving you loads of bifidobacteria, loads of lactobacillus, and the cheese also gives you immunoglobulins, which takes us right back to square one. What do immunoglobulins do in the gut? They reline the gut. Okay? And they heal the gut lining after all those nasty drugs have taken your gut lining away. And they also kickstart your whole immune system.
Fantastic. So things like kefir and homemade kefir is great, isn't it? Making your own fermented foods.
Got to be careful of the number of strains.
Yeah. Because
I went to make some, and the actual kefir granules only had 2 strains in them. Well, my probiotic's got 3 or 4. I mean, that's not even as good as my probiotic. I use the cheese and chuckling goat kefir because they've got loads of strains.
Chuckling goat.
You've got, well, I mean, it's an example. Chuckling goat's quite an acquired taste, apparently. But you get like 1 spoonful down your throat or 2 spoonfuls. You don't go and swig the whole bottle. And I don't want you swigging the whole bottle. I just want you getting a taste. I always say to people, you know, the Queen takes her own cutlery to Mexico. Why? Because you're going to go lick a dry spoon and you're going to get a bug. Well, that's all I want you to do. Yeah. I want you to almost wave the spoon around the raw cheese, goats, sheep, cows, and lick it off. And the next day, that's all you have to do with the lactobacillus bugs. Fantastic. You need to put good guys on board.
There's a lot of curiosity about oregano oil. So I take it in drops orally. How would you recommend to take it? And if people, yeah, how much do you recommend?
Okay, if you take oregano oil, I always say to people, literally when you wake up, get a glass of water and room temperature and take oregano oil, 180 milligrams. Do the same thing last thing night. I've got oregano oil in the fridge right next door.
But Chris, it's so, just as a warning for everyone, it can really burn your throat. So drink it quickly, right? It can burn your throat when you drink it, so you just want to down it very quickly.
Oh yeah, sorry, I'm talking about pills.
Okay, you're taking pills. Okay, I have the
I
drops.
take 150 milligrams in a pill, first thing in the morning, last thing at night. The other thing I might do, if someone, we get people who literally after about 4 or 5 days are burping like crazy. And I always say to them, it's not you burping, it's your yeast. They hate it. Yes. But you can also put it on your wrists. Yes, you can put it on your wrists and here, you know, morning and night if you want.
So it's your yeast kind of dying off, I guess, the burping.
Yes. Well, yes. I mean, nothing, even a parasite killer, just don't kill them like that. You're going to have 4 or 5 days when they're wriggling around and hating every minute of it, and they're resisting you. That's the problem.
And can you take the same amount when you're on chemo, oregano, and when you're
not? Yeah. We tell people to take that same amount.
Fantastic. Okay, so Chris, you've been a superstar. Thank you so much. Final question from Oni. How long can you take berberine for post-treatment as a maintenance dose? So in recovery after cancer treatment.
Okay, if you're having chemo, we use berberine, melatonin, turmeric, and hinokiol to actually enhance your chemo, because all 4 of those attack cancer cells and do other things. 3 of them cut 3 of them actually reduce inflammation in the body.
What's number 4, did you say? Hinokiol.
Hinokiol. Hinokiol is traditional Chinese medicine. It's from the magnolia bush, and there's 20 centers in the Western world looking at it. And basically, it attacks cancer cells, and it also kills cancer cells, and it reduces metastases. Whereas the other 3 reduce inflammation and 1 cuts blood sugar. So they're the 4 we use. So we use berberine throughout chemo. And I always say to people, use it for about 6 months afterwards. I don't, like anything, I wouldn't really want you to use it for 3 years or 4 years. I usually, for example, when people have surgery, the next 18 months is the worrying time. That's when it's going to spread. If it's going to spread, nice man with scalpels, let it loose. So we use things like oratidine, we have done for 18 years now. And we use things like hinokiol or modified citrus pectin, dandelion root with hinokiol, things like that, to actually restrict the ability of the cancer to spread.
And can you use berberine if you have chemo and immunotherapy?
Chemo and immunotherapy together?
I think.
Okay. I am wary of immunotherapy. And the reason I'm wary of immunotherapy is I've had some people for whom it has worked incredibly well. And so I don't want to screw it up. And you tend to get immunotherapy working incredibly well, or working modestly for 6 or 8 months, or just not working at all. So if it's not going to work at all, I don't want to get blamed for
also,
it not working.
A big element of that is your gut health, isn't it? The majority of immunotherapy.
Absolutely right. We've read the research. Lille, Chicago, you name it. It says people who eat lots of soluble fiber get better results from immunotherapy. People who take lactobacillus and bifido get better results from immunotherapy. It's all about your T cells. That's what you're trying to do. And they've shown, Lille showed that actually immunotherapies can damage your gut microbiome worse than chemo. And so at the very moment you want all this working to attack your cancer, the thing is putting down its helpers.
Yeah. And it's wild that they won the Nobel Peace Prize then for all of that, didn't they? The Nobel Prize.
They won the Nobel Peace Prize, you say?
They won the Nobel Prize, I think, for the immunotherapy, wasn't it? It was recently, fairly recently. Thank you so much. We will hopefully welcome you back at some point to talk about the off-labels and also to talk about fasting, which I think is another topic. Chris, Thank you for all your research. 18 years is just incredible. So
18 years of research. Yeah.
yeah, you've been a beacon of light to many, and we're very, very grateful to you. So I hope you enjoy your evening in Thailand.
It's my
And,
pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on the show. I hope people learned something.
and have you taken your oregano? The last thing was how many years can you take it? Can you just, I guess you can just keep taking it as a...
Last thing I will tell people, I had antibiotics for the first 32 years of my life.
Yeah.
And then one day in a meeting, I went, get these bloody things out of me. I had tonsillitis every year. And if you've had that as a background, obviously I've lost some bugs, but actually I've always taken fish oils, which calm your gut. I've also always taken, eaten things like raw cheese. And if I see the odd bottle of kombucha around, I try it. So I've always done things like that, even when I was in advertising. You know, I've made the ripe old age of 71, so it can't have been bad for me.
Well, you're looking well. You're looking good. The Thai vitamin D is serving you well.
Okay, I was going to say, you say that to all the boys.
Yeah, all of them, of course, Chris. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. And Chris, your daughter will definitely be very proud of you. So keep up the good work. And
All right, thank you very much.
sending love to you all.
Okay, bye.
Have a good weekend, everyone. Thanks so much, Chris.
Bye.
Bye-bye.